on things like the Well Child Awards and then having to snap open his wallet for $1 million by visiting that particular charitable trust. Being interesting is a recent bombshell story that was released over the weekend. And this was the headline about how Harry now he was just on his way back to the Royals. This is all based on his recent return back here to the United Kingdom, up in Nottingham, pledging, not donating, pledging £1 million, right? So remember that.
The palace has finally had enough. After years of silence, sources close to Buckingham whisper that the gloves are off. And this time, the target is Harry and Meghan. What began as quiet frustration has now erupted into a coordinated pushback, one that insiders say could mark the end of the Sussexes' carefully crafted narrative. It's no longer just a question of family disagreements or royal protocol. Insiders claim this is a communications war, Hollywood-style spin clashing with centuries of Windsor discipline. For the first time in a long while, the palace isn't just defending itself, it's striking back. And there's so much to unpack here, from whispers of a new PR crisis inside Montecito, to the united message sent by Buckingham, Clarence House, and Kensington Palace, to the growing tension between William's hardline and Meghan's endless reinvention. It's all colliding at once. We're diving into what royal aides describe as the snap, the moment the palace stopped playing defense and started taking control of the story. Because if insiders are right, this could be the biggest turning point in the royal saga since Megxit itself. When the palace finally snapped, the first casualty was Meghan and Harry's new communications push. Insiders say the Sussexes were banking heavily on Meredith Mayne, the latest figure drafted in to rescue their image and reshape the narrative around Montecito. Her appointment was supposed to signal strength, a seasoned media hand ready to battle the tabloids and polish their brand. But palace aides whisper that even before she could settle in, the ground shifted beneath her feet. What was framed as a bold relaunch turned almost overnight into a full-blown PR crisis. Those same aides point out that super agents before her, people with far more powerful resumes, lost their footing quickly when they realized the scale of damage control required around Harry and Meghan. Royal commentators describe it as a clash of two very different systems. On one side, Hollywood-style PR, glossy photo ops, and carefully staged exclusives meant to win the court of public opinion. On the other, Windsor discipline, centuries-old protocol, controlled messaging, and a machine that can quietly bury a story by refusing to acknowledge it. This time, though, the palace didn't just bury the story. Sources say they seized the opportunity to remind the world exactly who sets the record straight in royal matters. And the Sussexes' communication strategy, insiders whisper, has never looked weaker. Royal insiders say what happened next was nothing short of extraordinary. For the first time since the Sussex saga began, Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and Kensington Palace all moved as one. A united message was released, subtle, precise, but powerful enough to silence months of speculation in a single stroke. The statement left no room for interpretation. Harry would not be asked back to deputize for the king. Not now, not ever. Insiders close to palace aides whisper that this was a deliberate move designed to shut down Meghan's camp before their soft re-entry storyline gained traction. It wasn't random timing either. Sources suggest the message had been carefully coordinated behind the scenes, with every royal household agreeing the line had to be drawn. And the fact that three separate branches of the monarchy spoke in unison sent a louder signal than any single press release could manage. Royal commentators say it was as though the palace was flexing its muscles after years of restraint, a rare show of unity designed to remind Harry and Meghan and the world that when the monarchy decides to speak, it speaks with one voice. And yet, even as that message echoed across headlines, Meghan's PR machine was spinning a very different tale. Even as the palace delivered its most united message in years, Meghan's camp was busy pushing a very different story. Insiders say her team wanted the world to believe Harry was quietly being welcomed back, attending private events, lending support at sensitive moments, and proving that the monarchy missed his presence. But palace aides insist it was pure fiction. A fantasy for glossy magazines, one source close to Buckingham was quoted as saying, "In their eyes, this wasn't just exaggeration, it was deliberate spin, a Hollywood-style rewrite of reality designed to keep the Sussex brand alive." Take, for example, Harry's much-publicized pledge of £1 million for charity. Whispers in royal circles point out the nuance. It wasn't an outright donation, but a promise based on future earnings. Yet the way it was presented, polished headlines, dramatic framing, gave the impression of a grand gesture of generosity. It's this kind of wordplay, insiders claim, that fuels the Sussex PR engine while quietly frustrating the palace. To Windsor insiders, this was the heart of the problem. Meghan's team was building castles in the air, stories that made for great sound bites but collapsed under scrutiny. The palace, determined to reassert control, chose this moment to snap back, making it clear whose version of events would stand. And in doing so, they sent a message not just to Montecito, but to the world. When it comes to royal truth, spin only goes so far. For King Charles, insiders say the hardest part hasn't been Harry's defiance, it's Meghan's absence. When the coronation came, she stayed in California, citing what many in royal circles now call the infamous sponge cake excuse. To the palace, that wasn't just a flimsy reason. It was a symbol of how distant she had become from the very institution that gave her a title. Sources close to Buckingham whisper that the king has been left deeply hurt. He had extended olive branches, hoping Meghan would take even the smallest steps to rebuild trust. But instead, he's been confronted with a narrative she continues to push. Whispers of private Zoom calls with the king, suggestions of reconciliation behind closed doors, and stories painting her as still having a quiet line into the monarch's confidence. Aides roll their eyes at the thought. The king on Zoom with Meghan? It's absurd, one courtier was overheard saying. In truth, insiders insist the king barely knows her. Their interactions have been few and strained. The idea of warm, personal chats is seen inside the palace as nothing more than another glossy tale from Montecito. This fracture matters because it isn't just personal, it's political. By keeping Meghan at a distance, Charles has made it clear she isn't part of the royal machine. And yet, by weaving herself back into the story through whispers and spin, Meghan ensures her name remains entangled with the monarchy she walked away from. And while Charles has remained outwardly calm, insiders say his patience is thin. It may be Harry's face in the headlines, but it's Meghan's shadow that lingers over every conversation. If King Charles is wounded by Meghan's distance, Prince William is simply done. Insiders close to Kensington Palace say William has drawn a hard line. No return, no special treatment, no soft re-entry for Harry or Meghan. For him, the damage isn't just personal, it's institutional. Royal aides whisper that William has made it clear. The monarchy cannot function with half-in, half-out royals pulling the spotlight from the inside. His position, sources claim, is stone cold. The Sussexes chose their path, and in his eyes, they cannot keep dipping back into the royal well whenever it suits them. This puts him at odds with voices like Princess Anne, who has warned in the past that slimming down the monarchy too much risks weakening the crown. But William isn't budging. Insiders describe him as fiercely protective of the institution and deeply mistrustful of Harry's motives. Every PR push from Montecito, every whisper of reconciliation, is seen as another ploy to leverage the royal name without serving the royal duty. And to those close to William, this isn't just about Harry anymore, it's about Meghan. Aides believe he sees her influence as the force driving Harry's choices, the strategist scripting every demand and every headline that, more than anything, has hardened his resolve. Insiders put it bluntly, if Charles leaves room for sentiment, William leaves none. For him, the palace snapping wasn't a shock, it was overdue. While the palace was flexing its muscles, whispers say the mood in Montecito was anything but calm. Insiders close to the Sussex circle describe panic, confusion, and rising tempers behind closed doors. What was meant to be a fresh relaunch of their public image has quickly turned into another PR firestorm. At the center of it all is Meredith Mayne, Meghan and Harry's newly recruited communications figure. Just weeks ago, she was hailed in glossy profiles as the one who could finally steady the Sussex ship. Now, royal watchers whisper she's become the latest casualty of impossible expectations. From celebrated to commiserated in record time, one media insider quipped. Friends close to the couple suggest Meghan in particular is furious. She had expected the palace to remain passive, to allow her team's version of events to spread unchecked, as they so often had in the past. Instead, she's been confronted with a united royal wall, one that insiders say has left her rattled and resentful. Harry, sources claim, is caught in the middle, frustrated but uncertain how to respond without worsening the divide. Aides whisper he's desperate for some kind of breakthrough, but every attempt is now seen as spin rather than sincerity. From the outside, it looks like polished photos and confident sound bites. But inside Montecito, those close to the Sussexes say the mood feels more like meltdown, exhausted staff, tense strategy sessions, and the sinking realization that the palace has finally learned how to win the PR game. The biggest question swirling around the corridors of Buckingham isn't whether the palace snapped, it's why now. For years, they let Harry and Meghan's stories play out unchecked, quietly hoping the noise would fade. So why did they finally strike back at this moment? Insiders close to senior aides whisper that the timing was deliberate. They say the Sussexes' latest narrative, painting Harry as quietly stepping back into royal life, was beginning to gain traction in the press. Glossy features and soft interviews had started framing Harry as a reluctant prodigal son, subtly preparing the ground for a royal comeback. That, sources claim, was the tipping point. If left unchallenged, the story would have embedded itself in the public imagination. And once that happens, aides say, it's almost impossible to roll back. They had to kill the story before it grew legs. One palace insider explained, "There's also the matter of unity. Whispers suggest this pushback wasn't just about the Sussexes. It was about showing the world that the monarchy can act with one voice when it matters." After months of speculation about Charles's health, William's growing influence, and the future of the firm, insiders say this was a carefully calculated move to project strength and stability. Royal commentators argue it's the most decisive message since Megxit. Not a reactive press note, but a strategic reminder. The Crown, not Montecito, writes the royal story. And by snapping now, the palace didn't just shut down Meghan's latest spin, they sent a warning shot about what's to come. If insiders are right, this palace snap isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new phase. For years, Meghan and Harry controlled the headlines with their interviews, documentaries, and carefully timed leaks. Now, sources close to Buckingham say the monarchy has finally realized that silence is no longer protection, it's permission. The question is, how far will this go? Royal commentators whisper that if the Sussex camp continues pushing stories of a soft return, the palace could go even further, stripping away the last remaining symbols of royal privilege that Harry and Meghan still cling to. Titles, patronages, and even certain financial ties could be on the table if the war of words escalates. At the same time, insiders caution that the palace will play the long game. They don't need to shout or spin, they only need to plant doubt in the public's mind. And now that they've shown they can outmaneuver Montecito's Hollywood tactics, the balance of power looks very different. For Harry and Meghan, the risks are mounting. Every story they push, every claim they make, will now be met with scrutiny they haven't faced before. Friends close to the couple whisper that Meghan is determined not to back down, but others fear the palace has made it clear there's no way back. And so the stage is set for the next chapter. The palace has finally snapped, and insiders say this is only the opening act. The real question is whether Meghan and Harry will fight harder or fade faster. For years, the Sussexes told their story, shaping headlines with emotional interviews and carefully orchestrated soundbites. But now, insiders say the palace is done with silence. They've snapped, and in doing so, they've reminded the world that Windsor discipline still trumps Hollywood spin. And if this is only the first move, the next chapter could be even more explosive. This is Hollywood Daily Reports. Subscribe, stay tuned, and buckle up, because there's more from where this came from.